Hello and welcome to my show. Could you be more specific? I'm your host, Jonathan Steele, coming to you by the way of the Stay Woke podcast. And on this episode of Could You Be More Specific, I'm going to title it The Sit Down. Now, I'm going to touch on Kanye West and his meeting at the White House with President Trump. And I'm also going to touch on Lebron James, and he had another episode of The Shop. And I just want to do another follow-up on him and just where he's at in our pop culture, and also talk about other things that they discuss on the show. But I'm going to start first with Kanye and Trump. I know this has been a going thing where I know where I've been saying especially, and I know as a overall culture and community, we keep talking about Kanye and where he is and what's his status, not just in hip hop, but just what he is in mainstream pop culture in our community. He's still relevant and important. He's not relevant important to some in the ways that we viewed him, say, 13 years ago, where he says, George Bush doesn't care about black people. And he said that at coming off his first album, Late Registration hadn't even came out yet. And a lot of people felt like he was kind of jeopardizing his career then. And it's just that response there was really telling on who Kanye was. And I think that kind of shaped how people viewed him moving forward after that. And you look past a lot of the things personally that you already knew that were there from a character trait standpoint. But when you like someone, you'll make adjustments to them. Like again, before, ego and narcissism has always been a part of what Kanye's done. I know recently he feels like he makes the best music. That's obviously subjective, or there's some people that probably feel like Kanye does make the best music. Yeah. Personally, do I think he does? No, I don't. But again, you don't have to be all things to everybody. You just have to have a place with where you're at. But I know him meeting with Trump, I know they were saying even President Trump's people were a little bit surprised with how bizarre it was. And I know he brought Jim Brown with him, and obviously Jim Brown is trying to get funding to some of the programs that he works on, still in the predominantly black and brown areas of our country, and trying to help people. So while, watching him with Trump isn't the best of those signs, because a lot of his policies and a lot of things that's going on doesn't really help us in that way. I know he claims that, but like I've said on previous pods before, there is this thing called the staggered economy. A lot of bills and certain job acts that were signed into law in the previous administration, a lot of those things don't kick into later dates, and they're starting to happen around this portion. And that's just what it is. It's always been that way for the economy. But the fact that President Trump, as you should say, has been able to kind of navigate through this whole situation in terms of not just his policies, but the way he conducts himself with the media and just people in general, he's in a kind of an untouchable position in some ways, because no one really brings up his stuff. It's now kind of viewed as tabloid stuff for the most part. And hey, probably out of this meeting, and it's going to be a great thing, Trump is going to probably do something that gives money in some form or fashion to helping, any of the causes that Kanye is probably pushing for, whether it's mental health or trying to build factories or to do something like that in terms of employing people. I know Kanye talked about that with the prison system. And while I know he's definitely all over the place, he has been all over the place before. I know T.I. and Snoop and Diddy have been, one of the more vocal critics lately. It all started with Snoop, really, who really was taking him to task. I think it's going to be interesting to see in the coming weeks, because you got an election that's coming up in roughly, 3 weeks or so. And I wouldn't be surprised if they pass something to where they help Kanye in that way. And then Kanye can then go back and tell people like, hey, this is what I'm doing in the community. This is what I'm fighting for. And to a certain degree, when his critiques on the majority of the mainstream media isn't inaccurate, it's just to a certain degree, it's some forms of false equivalency. Because I do think sometimes both sides will drown out voices that don't agree with them 100% of the time. And I think that becomes frustrating for most people. And that's why I feel like, I don't know if that would ever happen, but an independent party, say that were to form, where they had real candidates and had a real political structure system that didn't take money from special interest groups, if you were to really unlock and tap the voting population that we truly have in our country, that would become an independent party, I think that would really divert and change up a lot of things. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Kanye over these next several weeks, because the whole hat thing, I'm over the hat. I know I said that before. As far as him saying some of the stuff that he says, I know some of it is scattered. He takes pieces of information, he doesn't really research it, but he takes parts of ideas and then he expands on them. I guess, to a certain degree, social media is a headline culture where we'll have people make comments on topics and they haven't even read anything on the topic. They haven't researched it. They don't know what the story is, because all we see on any of our social media outlets is usually a headline and then people react. So that's a really true statement overall for us to be thinking about. But it's going to be interesting to see what's the temperature of the country going to be post the midterm elections. But those are just some of the things I wanted to touch on with the Kanye situation. I'm pretty sure I'll be talking about this topic again at some point. But I'm going to go ahead and transition into talking about LeBron in the recent second episode premiere of his show, The Shot. It looked like they were at a different place. The lighting of it was different. I know he had Mo Bamba and Ellen Donna Dion, who's a really good basketball player. Hopefully I said her name right. Victor Oladipo and Maverick Carter, of course, his business partner was there, and Drake was on this episode, but he comes later on in the show. But it's just really fascinating to see how far LeBron's come. I saw another headline about just the way he's now kind of infused his brand and his stamp in all forms of media and all forms of branding, with entertainment is remarkable. He's definitely going to be the most successful athlete ever. But the thing is, he's doing it during his NBA career, which is, insane, which, bothers a lot of those purists. And that's why LeBron, because he had that mindset from beforehand, that's why there's no such thing as loyalty to teams, because teams, like corporations, don't have loyalty to the employer or to the employee. You're loyal to the employer. And that's why LeBron's like, I'm not really hung up on I got to be with one team for the rest of my career. That's the old school. Whenever you hear people talk about it, it's always someone from the other past generation that complains and whines about that. It's just been really, fascinating to watch just how those conversations were breaking down. Obviously, I don't know if some people know, but, Victor Oladipo does really sing, and Mo Bamba is an up-and-coming basketball player. And just hearing, hearing and seeing the subject matter they talk about and how they carry themselves, and it does seem like it's a more relaxed thing. Now, I've heard some people complain like, well, they drink red wine at the barbershop. Like, you're getting caught up on the wrong thing. They're multimillionaires. It's like, they're not trying, LeBron has openly admitted that he drinks wine. You think if he were to go to a barbershop, one, he's not going to a public barbershop. He shuts down a barbershop. And it's just exclusively him. And that's it. So when I keep hearing people get hung up on, oh, well, people don't drink red wine at a barbershop at the one you're at. But when you're in a private jet, on a yacht and boat, you drink wine. So I don't know why people still complain about LeBron drinking wine on a barbershop show. It's ridiculous. But it is interesting, though, how he does kind of navigate. And he has become a big-time figure to a lot of young and up-and-coming athletes especially. Because even for Victor Oladipo, who now plays for the Indiana Pacers, he kind of talked about that in terms of looking at LeBron and like, how does he juggle and balance all the things that he's working on? And him just having to go through that process. The subject matters that they always touch on is always usually current, or at least at that time. I know they touched on Serena Williams, and they also touched on, with the, sports psychology and just the mindset that you're in, which I thought was fascinating because I know Elena Dion, who plays in the WNBA, she says I'm really fascinating. She said that, her psychologist said that the person you talk to the most in a daze yourself. So sometimes it's hard to turn off certain things about yourself that's good, and it's hard to turn on certain things about you that's bad because, and I'm paraphrasing overall, is because you're in your head all the time. You're talking to yourself all the time on what you're doing and how you're feeling and what your plans are and how you're gonna, move throughout the day. So I do think that that was very kind of telling that they did kind of touch on that a bit. Of course, after they kind of got done in the middle part of the episode, they end up breaking, and then Drake comes in. And I know for Drake, obviously he has a close relationship with LeBron. It's been this way for several years, and they touched on our previous topic, Kanye West, at one point, and just the misleading intentions that he had towards him, from working on his album to telling him personal information about his son, and that being used against him and against his family. And obviously, like I said, this around the time when Pusha T put out the story Addion. The song from the scenario standpoint was cool. I guess you want to say that was well executed, but I really wasn't that overwhelmed by that song, because when you start going that personal, you start talking about dudes, mom, parents, and bringing up sick friends and wishing death on them. The fact that a lot of people made a false equivalence of saying that, hey, Drake said something about his fiance's ring and needing an upgrade. Like, sure, you spending the extra few $1,000s on a ring is the same as wishing death on another person. But that's you. That's fine. But, I do think what Drake said about showing restraint was important, because sometimes you have to. And I like the fact on the episode he says he did his research. He could have really went really low, but then he's like, I'm keeping it going, and I don't really want to do that. So if this helps people say like, hey, is this now a chink in my armor? And the fact that Drake acknowledged it, which isn't shocking, because if you look at his music, his vulnerability is what helps him sell his music. He's not putting on a front. And that's what makes Drake so compelling as an artist. So he's like, hey, you know what? You can have it, because I don't want to do that. And what I thought was fascinating is the fact that he says after he kind of let that go, he had only recorded 60% of Scorpion, but he ended up recording In My Feelings and Nonstop and Mob Ties and some of the records that people are talking about now. He was able to do it post that situation. That's something for us all to kind of think about. And it's not the whole, when they go low, you go high. But sometimes you got to think about, like, do I really want to participate in things like this? Or, and it was interesting that he said that he hit up LeBron and he gave him words of encouragement and said that he wasn't going to be disappointed in him that he didn't go there. And I know, there's certain people in all our lives where their opinion matters a lot. So, but those are some of the thoughts I had on the show. I would love to definitely follow up more on the show. But I want to thank all you guys who have been listening to this show. I'm looking forward to doing many more of these. I want to thank D for all the work that he continues to do for our podcast and help with the show. We got many great things coming ahead. Again, for those of you listening for the first time, my name is Jonathan Steele. Thank you for listening. Could you be more specific? Coming to you through the Stay Well podcast. Definitely keep checking us out. Support us and become a patron. And I'm looking forward to talking to you guys real soon. And have a good one.